You're listening to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast.
This podcast brings you the latest happenings in the O&P industry. We're unpacking trends and news from this tight-knit orthotics and prosthetics community.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Jacki Green. I'm a marketing specialist at SPS.
And I'm Brendan Erickson, regional sales manager here at SPS.
Welcome back to our listeners. If you're new to the O&P Check-in, here is what you can expect. In each episode, we provide a quick SPS update and discuss hot topics in O&P with leading professionals in the industry. Before we get started, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Looking for a truly universal line of LSOs and TLSOs? The sleek range from Tuan USA offers a wide variety of solutions for your patients. With waist circumferences up to 62 inches, give your patients the comfort, support, and relief they deserve with Sleek from Tuan USA. For more information on the features and benefits of the Sleek Universal Spine line, please feel free to reach out to your SPS sales representative.
Thank you, Tuan USA. Now let's see what's going on at SPS.
All right, SPS update. So we have the Clinical Minute featuring Knit Right's Liner Prosthetic Sock.
Who's doing this one, Jacki?
So you can join SPS Manager of Clinical Education, Sam Burnett,
All right, Sam.
with Tuan USA's Director of Clinical Education, Jack Kesselring.
All right, Jack. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. They provide a really nice little quick overview of the type of patients who may benefit from this. And you can also head over to the article in the SPS blog to learn more as well.
Yep. The Knit Right Liner is a unique staple product, and it's got some smart features there. They're all designed to help patients manage heat and moisture. So to all of our loyal listeners, learn all about the Liner Prosthetic Sock in this version of the Clinical Minute. All right, everyone. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, CEO of Click Medical, Jimmy Capra. Jimmy started his first company when he was only 8 years old and ran it profitably for 23 years. His business skills, creativity, and tenacious leadership then landed him a position as the first employee of BOA Technology. After spending 13 years developing hundreds of adjustability products and witnessing the positive impact on patients' lives, he decided to focus his efforts by co-founding Click Medical in 2013. Many of you guys have seen him speak at AOPA or Academy. Let's all go ahead and welcome Jimmy.
Thanks, Brendan. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here with us today. So before we dive into today's topic, can you expand a little bit on your bio and how did you get involved in O&P and how you kind of got where you're at now? Can you just tell us a little bit more about your story?
Sure. Well, like Brendan said, I have a long history of entrepreneurship. Started, when I was 8 years old, just mowing lawns across the street from my home, and really got excited about that and ended up, expanding that to a little empire, as people described it. At those young ages, I had as many as 400 different lawns that I was mowing, and employees that I had employed, and all sorts of different business elements that really taught me at an early age how business operates, and really the expectations of customers and the challenges that you go through in running a business. The part, though, that is the most interesting and maybe more applicable to today is that I really innovated a lot in that business. And the primary innovation that I really succeeded with was just efficiency in getting from one place to another. Most of those companies show up with a crew of guys, unload their gear, mow one lawn, load back up and leave. I decided, hey man, that's really a lot of work. So I ended up innovating different sales strategies and different relationship building capacities where I could get every single lawn on a street. So I would show up and then I would mow for 8 hours and then load up and head home. And that was just a really incredible lesson for me on how to innovate around the various challenges that you run into in a business. I then got to apply a lot of that as I grew older and changed, desires of what I'd like to be doing with my time. And I spent about 7 years teaching leadership to youth and actually to many corporate clients through the Colorado Outward Bound School, teaching kids how to mountaineer and rock climb and set out of their comfort zone to really challenge themselves. It was a place where I was able to really grow some interesting skills on how to lead. And then I brought that all into the job with BOA Technology, which was really a whole lot of fun. When I started as the very first employee, there was just the founder and his wife, and we had a whole business to grow with limitless possibilities. And that taught me over the 13 years I was there how to identify markets and how to identify product needs, how to innovate new concepts that would work well for those different markets. And that's where I ended up meeting Joe Mahon, my partner, now here at Click Medical. He called one day and said, "Hey, I've got a great idea." And I actually thought that was a pretty good idea. And I told him, hey, we can work with you, but you got to, go get a patent would be a great start. And he did. He got a really good one. And that patent has served as a basis for the building of Click Medical and the protection of these concepts, and really has aided us in the process of now taking a product concept and innovating all around how that can be applied, how that can be applied to a patient, how that can be applied to a practitioner, or how that can really benefit a business, an O&P business. So now we're in our 8th year and spending a lot of time and energy helping a ton of people and using those innovative concepts to really make our mission come to life.
Wow, that's awesome. Everything that you've done kind of evolves around just the idea of innovation, right? Every time I've seen you speak, I see people glued to you, and they're listening about the concept of innovation. In your experience as an entrepreneur, and based on developing patents and things like that, what to you is innovation?
It's a great question, and it's one that I actually really love because most people think about innovation as products. You can look very clearly at an iPhone or a Tesla or whatever innovation you're thinking about and think about an innovative product. That's really important and that's really good. But the most important part about innovation is, how does it really change lives? How does a new way of doing something, even just a process in your company, or a new way of relating to someone, a new way of relating within some of your primary and most important relationships. It's the same topic of innovation, and it's the place where we really get to take challenges that come into our lives, decide that we feel uncomfortable about them or want something different or better, and then apply this innovative approach, which allows for you to determine the new and hopefully better way of approaching that problem. We innovate all the time. All of us, every single day, almost minute by minute, are going through that process where we take in some sort of new input, decide whether we like it or not, and then put to the test our ability to innovate and bring some sort of solution to that particular problem, whatever it might be. And so I like to think of it as something that's very real in everyone's life almost all day long. And if we can hone in on that process, if we can understand what we're doing there, then the opportunity to apply that into products that you're developing, or relationships that you're developing, or the overall business that you're working on, it just starts to become natural.
Talking about innovation, I love hearing everybody's different views on their interpretation or their understanding or their description or their whatever you want to call it of innovation. And I really like the way you were explaining it and breaking it down, and how we're all kind of innovating every day in just our simple decision-making process. I think it's super interesting. So what can professionals in O&P do to get to that feeling and achieving real innovation? What do you think that looks like?
It's a complex question. And it's a complex question because what we're talking about here is not like I said, it's something we do very naturally, but it's kind of amazing how humans are resistant to change and how we end up thinking we're innovating sometimes, but we're actually just, we're doing something different, right? Maybe we're avoiding a topic. Maybe we're not truly engaging in it because we are scared of it, or we don't know how to do it, or we're worried about whether we are good enough to be able to do it. There's a lot of what I kind of call faux innovation. My favorite one really is the thing that all businesses end up doing, and that's doing what we already do, just more efficiently and at a cheaper price. Well, that is innovative to some degree in terms of being able to do it more efficiently or at a cheaper price, but that's not actually innovation. I think we have to think of true innovation. Somebody brought up yesterday blockbuster videos, right? That was really innovative until it wasn't at all. And if we're not engaging in innovative thinking that brings us to a brand new place, not what we're doing already, but to a brand new place, then eventually that innovate or die concept actually starts to play out, because someone else is going to be innovating in that brand new concept or brand new space. So if we can really find ways to be in the mindset that, hey, what we are doing is good, I can do what I'm doing already better, but what actually is going to be needed tomorrow? That's an important place for us to sit as a general concept. If you can do that, well, then there's some various tools that I talk about that help you actually put it into action. And some of those tools, they're fairly simple. One is just getting comfortable with the state of mind that you can do it differently, or that maybe you should do it differently. Another is literally to master, or is to come up with the courage that you need. People don't really think of innovation and courage, but that's probably because they haven't really pushed the envelope. But when you're pushing the envelope, you're really vulnerable. I mean, maybe it's a wild idea that your boss doesn't like. Maybe it's some new concept that your wife or your husband doesn't like. Maybe it's it's certainly an area where you are putting yourself out there to be judged, criticized, ridiculed, or praised if it goes well, right? So it's a very scary place to be. And so putting on your courage is a really important part of being innovative. The next step is then resiliency, right? Because as I talk about in the innovative change curve, the parts of innovation that people don't realize are there because they're not part of the marketing programs are the shock, depression, anxiety that show up in the process of innovating. And those are hard words, right? None of us like shock or depression. We don't like feeling anxious. But those are part of the innovative curve, because when we decide to change something, we're stepping out of our comfort zone. And when we step out of our comfort zone, it's not all pretty, right? It's scary. We are shocked by people's reactions. We get depressed that things aren't happening as fast as we would like, or as smoothly as we would like. We feel anxious because we don't know whether we're going to succeed. So if you can really master up that courage and then bring in a sense of resiliency, you can take those punches as they come and say, you know what, it's okay. Yeah, I don't have the answer yet, but I will, because I'm going to keep at it. So those are those main tools that I try to really talk about. Getting comfortable with the scary state of mind, mustering up the courage, really using a lot of resiliency as you're stepping out of that comfort zone into the sense of true innovation.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot here, Jimmy, and I think the way I always thought about innovation was summarized in the old saying of, necessity is the mother of all innovation, right? And that's almost a snapshot compared to what you're telling me today, right? That's one flash in time. You have a problem, you need to innovate to get around it, through it, over it, under it, whatever. But you're talking about a whole innovation curve and overcoming the resistance of change in a person to actually build a lifelong way to get through that problem, or to foresee other problems that are similar and innovate ways around it. So it's in my mind, it's much more of taking something static and now building a timeline over your lifetime with that innovation. Am I correct there a little bit?
Oh, I love the way you're thinking about it that way, because right, innovation is one of these words that is used a lot, kind of like collaboration, right? It's easy to talk about collaborating. It's actually hard to work with people. Teamwork is a challenging thing, but so can innovation, right? So we love the idea of these sexy new ideas, and what we see out in the world, we see the amazing success, right? And so many people come to me and say, hey, Jimmy, I've got an idea. I'm like, well, great. The idea is like 3% of it. The 97% that's ahead of you is the really hard, scary, vulnerable work that you're going to have to do in order to bring that thing to life. That is an invitation to then say, oh, okay, how am I gonna set myself up for the real process, not just the sexy outcome, but the real process. And that's where you need that courage. It's where you need the resiliency, because it just, long and short of it, is just hard work. Making something new, especially making something new that has value, is not something that everyone ends up being able to or gets an opportunity to do on a regular basis. That's to say, like, the big ones, right? There's only so many, like, big inventors, for example, that you think of. I don't want to discount what I said earlier, which is that we each innovate every single day as we progress through our days. And that's just as important of an innovative process.
I really like how you're breaking all down. I've always been taught in my educational background that innovation is disruptive. So I like this more strategic approach of like how you can tackle and actually make innovation a part of your regular decision-making capabilities. So I like this. Innovation is courageous, it's resilience, it's stepping outside your comfort zone. I really like how you're breaking it down.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think of relationships are a really great place to illustrate that, where, the Hollywood romance that ends in happily ever after, right? Those are easy things to say. They're really nice things to dream about. But the reality of relationships is that they're hard. And they span a really long period of time, to your point, Brendan. And so what can we do to allow for those disruptions that show up, the hard stuff that shows up, and instead of shying away from it or covering it up, really engage with it? Because that's where we as humans learn. It's where we innovate, is when we have a problem and we want to get through it. So I like what you're saying there, because you really can use that innovative spirit, whether it's to get through the day with your spouse or whether it's to develop some brand new product that's a blockbuster in the market. Same kind of thing, if we can really find those inner tools to use, regardless of the size or the application of the process.
That's great stuff. So let's talk about it specific to our O&P industry. What are some of the necessities for innovation, and what are some of the challenges you've seen, and maybe some moments of resiliency that you've seen out there too?
Great question. I find the O&P industry to be wildly interesting, and it's wildly interesting because it's filled with variables, right? Most of life is filled with variables. But, when you're talking about patient care, you're talking about one-off custom designs for a very particular patient who has a very particular shape, who has a certain set of activities, who, has a certain medical condition. Like, it is a really difficult problem to solve.
And none of the same, right? You meet one patient, you've met one patient.
You've met one patient, and you've got to be innovative around that one patient. Now, what's interesting in O&P is that the passion for caring for individuals is this amazing force for driving those caring practitioners to deliver that really custom innovative care. They're innovating like crazy already on how do I solve the problems for this particular patient. The problem that shows up in O&P though is really all about scalability. Any really successful business typically has the ability to scale, or they work very hard to innovate what they make or how they do it so that they can do it really efficiently. That's hard to do in O&P, but it's not impossible. And it's the area where I think that the true pressure from the world is showing up in our community of O&P. Because, healthcare expenditures are already large. Insurance companies are squeezing things down for good reasons. They have to innovate and deliver their product efficiently as well. There's a lot of scrutiny on large medical expenditures, and some of the treatment that we provide in O&P is very expensive. So what enters there then for me is a really interesting new phase of the O&P industry where it says, hey, let's honor and respect the variables that are at play, but how might we start to use an innovative mindset to be able to deliver that care in a really efficient manner? And what kind of the overall most important question there is, how do we create value, right? It's not really just about, I gave patient Johnny a great leg. It's really about, can I stay in business? Can I affect not just Johnny, but hundreds of other people? Can I build a overall value to my business or my practice that will allow me to retire whenever I choose to do so? Might I be able to be really efficient and hire more people and see more patients? There's so many different elements of our industry that need to step into that innovation mindset to really be able to then operate within the changing environment of O&P. And as we look at like big acquisitions from the big players, or really even from smaller players that are now starting to aggregate and become bigger entities within O&P, this stuff becomes really, really important. I can imagine a time where, the mom and pop really suffers because they just don't have the scalability. And then therefore they don't get to deliver the amazing care that they've learned how and that they've worked so hard to be able to give. And so how can they start to really innovate and usher in a new era that allows for them to do this amazing work, but not get squashed by the bigger system that is really coming into play within the O&P industry itself? Now, let's just say real quickly, that's scary.
Well, consolidation in anything is scary, and that's a natural progression of market forces. So, it's out there. And it is scary. I agree with you.
It's super scary. And that's when I give this innovation talk, I talk a lot about fear. And, fear is just, it's so present because we have to change. And that's not easy. So if we can step into that, again, if we can put on courage, if we can make sure we are bringing as much resiliency, if we can step out of our comfort zones, that's where that innovation can happen. And then answers start to show up for those hard questions that are challenging us.
Okay, so what can listeners do to help themselves open up to be more innovative?
There's a couple of tools which are really great to use. And I'm going to just rattle them off really quickly. We already talked about the important parts of courage, of resiliency. Those things are really important. There's a couple of things that you can do that really actually work quite effectively. One is to just take stock. And by that I mean that we know a lot more than we think we do about what's going on around us. So I like to have people pause and just take stock. And the question right there is, what is certain and what is uncertain? And literally make a list. Because the things that are certain are things that you can act on, you can react to, you can, you can bounce off of, or put your radar up around. These are things that are real and now, and they're important to know. Just as important, but harder to know, are the things that are uncertain. If we look at the O&P environment right now, there's a huge amount of uncertainty on a whole bunch of different levels. Acquisition being one of them, consolidations, different product offerings, tons of uncertainty. Who knows what's going to be happening? Those you can't act on immediately, but boy, you can start to dream around. And if you start to dream around those uncertain things, you might fall into some really great idea, a really great method of preparing, of adapting, of creating that can really help you. So I like people to first pause, look at what's certain, what's uncertain, and then from that list, they can start the process.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And it's apparent with what Click Medical is doing. They're innovating new products. They're adding, adaptability to all different devices, not just prosthetics, and adjustability, things that allow patients to do things on their own. All of that is innovative and I think a progress within our industry. So, much appreciation to you guys for what you've done. I know we didn't talk about your products and that wasn't the goal. It was much more to dig inside your mindset. And I think we now know exactly what you guys are doing. And it's awesome. So thank you very much. I guess we got a couple more questions, but how can listeners apply this and cultivate this kind of mentality and skill of innovation?
Well, the first answer I'll give is just a plug for the AOPA presentation that I'll be giving in a couple of weeks. We go through a process of talking about the innovation mindset, and then we practice some different ways of doing it. And listen, it's really fun, right? There's no barriers in terms of fear or exposing or vulnerabilities or something. This is just a discussion, and it's really fun to see people get inspired by it. Once you have that inspiration, then really there's some tools that I talk about within the presentation that helps you then start to integrate these concepts into your daily life. And they're not that different than putting on an innovation mindset and ushering courage and resiliency. But there's some actual tools that we talk about in that presentation that help you practice pushing your mind farther than it normally goes. And that actually is the fun part, right? It's the place where we get to realize the saying of every innovative idea should sound ridiculous at first blush. And it's fun, right? It's fun to push that envelope and say, the thing I'm about to say in this little group conversation is ridiculous.
Or hey, honey, let's move to, an island in Mexico. Exactly.
Yeah. These are the exact things that at first sound totally ridiculous. And then once you open your mind to I don't know, which island? Are we growing our food or buying our food? Are we, is it sunny or is it rainy? And all of a sudden that's where the exciting part shows up, because you get to start to dream. And that does bring up another interesting part about innovation I think that's our superpower, is dreaming. We can dream into existence things that have never, ever happened or that aren't real. We can think about it and believe that it's possible. And my gosh, it's our superpower. I can literally just see you put on the cape and you start, really thinking and dreaming about what's even possible. And maybe it's moving to an island in Mexico. Maybe it's a new product innovation. Maybe it's a really great relationship. All of those things count. And they're the fun part of stepping into that innovation mindset.
Oh, that's great. And I know you probably have a lot of tools and tricks that are in your full length presentations, and we don't want to steal those from you. But you can continue if you want, or if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Here, I'll throw one more in that's really is fun and something that I think is a way for folks to engage really easily. And that's, take your problem whatever that problem is, and then I want you to add an ingredient to it. And that ingredient is something that is a futuristic idea. So, for example, I like to play with the idea of smart clothing. But maybe there's some smart clothing out there. Heck, there's smart luggage. Who knows what smart really means? But just pretend that the textiles that you're wearing have all sorts of capabilities. Now apply that to the problem that you are addressing. It seems weird, right? Like, what do textiles have anything to do with this particular problem? But the trick here is that what that does is it opens your brain up to the ridiculous or the unknown or the non sequiturs that are like flying around, the connections that you're trying to make between the problem you have and some other big futuristic idea. We do that in the talk that I give, and it's really exciting to see people's minds literally just spring open. And the filters come off, the boundaries come down, and the creativity just soars. And so that's one that we definitely have fun with in the talk that I give. But again, you could apply that today, to a difficult email that you receive from someone. Oh my gosh, how am I going to answer this? Well, I don't know. Let me apply some ridiculous futuristic idea to it and see what shows up. And all of a sudden, you've got a whole bunch of creative juices that allow for you to come up with a great answer.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so helpful.
I'm going to do it, Jimmy. I'm going to hold myself to it, and I'm going to let you know what type of futuristic idea I come up later today, because I know I'm going to get some of those crazy emails.
Well, and even make yourself a quick list of crazy futuristic ideas. Just a sticky note on your computer that says
That's
flying
what I'm doing
cars.
Right now.
There it is.
Nice. That, sure, you get the challenge, you throw in the futuristic idea, and then bam, you're off innovating right away.
Man, this is so great. So do you have anything else that you want to add or any other little tidbits you want to say before we close out for this episode?
I'll add in one last thing. I think we live in a really interesting time, right? It's a time of total connectedness, yet there's this like amazing amount of like despair and overwhelm in our society. That condition is basically one of overwhelm, right? And from overwhelm does not come creativity, does not come inspiration, does not come connected, like truly connected relationships, right? We're barely surviving when we're in a state of overwhelm. So what I really try to remember for myself is like, hey, if I'm running into something big and I know that I need to find an answer to it, probably my best and most important tool is to just pause. Just slow it all down. Maybe slowing it down is taking those steps of learning what's certain or uncertain, or maybe it's just mustering up courage, or maybe it's trying to bring our resiliency into place. But what I'm really trying to do in that pause is just quiet the noise and get to the feeling, get to the heart of it. And from there, that's where that beauty really lies. That's where the power of our humanity really lies. We just have to turn it off to be able to turn it on, if that makes sense. So that's an important one.
I like that a lot.
I do too. And I will 100% bet that this will not underwhelm anybody. This episode is pretty darn cool, and we may be overwhelmed just even listening to all this, but I guess if we pause and maybe listen to it twice, everybody. Listen to it twice. That'll be a good idea. Pause, take all this in, and we'll all be in a better spot.
Yep.
I love that, Brendan. And I think, we are not incapable of this kind of thinking. We just don't practice it all that often, right? We're just busy, whatever. What I'm telling you on this podcast is absolutely approachable by just about anybody on this planet. And that's what I love about it, because it's not some crazy, difficult to learn thing. It's really kind of just getting back connected to who you are and what your superpowers are. And one of those superpowers is literally, like I said earlier, dreaming. What can we dream into existence today? Might be something small, might be something big, but you can do it. So it's fun to tap into that innate nature that we have. And one that I think if you really look at the progression of humanity throughout history, it's all about innovating. It's all about finding a way to keep fire lit, finding ways to find food, finding ways to be efficient in a society. So we've all got it. Let's just tap into it. And that's what I love helping inspire folks to do.
Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be invited. So great way to spend an afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about Click Medical or AOPA National Assembly, where you can hear Jimmy give this talk, follow the link in the show notes.
Well, there you have it. Thank you for listening to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast.
If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please rate and review the show to help fellow O&P professionals find us.
We'd also like to hear from you directly. What topics do you want us to cover? Do you have any burning questions? Email us with your thoughts and feedback at spspodcast@spsco.com. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.